use the chat line, make any comments that you want that I can address as we go along. Yeah, we've got an hour together. And so, look, if we can make it interactive, that would be all the better. I also understand that there'll be people who are looking after kids and organising their lives, so that may not be entirely possible for you. I'm going to draw some linkages to the environment, resilience, and the veterinary industry at the end when we sort of understand contextually how we might think about resilience. And resilience is one of those funny ones because I feel like it, it's there will be punters out there who say you can't teach resilience. And, resilience is one of those experiential things that you have to learn as you grow through life. And the more you put yourself out there, the more resilient you'll become. And I certainly wouldn't dispute that. But I also think that there are some shortcuts. There are some things that can be done that will better equip people to be able to move through life. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll go through a little bit of a slide deck. Claire, are you going to monitor the chat line and just interrupt me if you think it's worth?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That'd be great. Okay, so let's start with the definition. Here's a sort of a more sophisticated definition than probably what I would come up with, which is our ability to bounce back from what Daniel Goleman refers to as the amygdala hijack. Amygdala hijack is not a term that everyone's familiar with, but it's that immediate and overwhelming emotional response out of proportion to the stimulus, because it's triggered a more significant emotional threat. The amygdala is that part of the brain that handles emotions. And when it gets hijacked, it shuts down that sort of rational thinking part of the brain. So to give you a very, very simple example, road rage. It's a classic amygdala hijack where the response is completely disproportionate to what's taking place around you, yet we get sort of wrapped up in it. And if I was going to define resilience, I'd probably say falling down 5 times, getting up 6 times. So it's not about not falling over. It's not about not being able to cope. It's about being in that situation that is, stressful or overwhelming, and being able to actually keep going and push through. And so I really like the work of Dr. Stevens. He is a Queensland-based psychologist, and he references 4 domains for resilience. And the reason why I like them is because I think they're just really helpful for us in terms of how we think about it. And so let's just have a look at what they are. As soon as I can progress my slide, here we go. These 4 domains are the physical, practical, psychological, and social domain. And I'll go through each one of them and I'll just give some sort of practical examples as much as can. Feel free to photograph the slides if that's helpful to you. You can look through them later. So on the physical side, these are the sort of trifecta: exercise, food, and sleep. And I want to spend probably more time on sleep. But on the exercise side of things, it's really about teaching your mind that your body matters. So I'll give you a really simple example of this one. It's my daughter, actually. She's 20 and she was first year uni down in ANU, wasn't loving the college life, and sort of buried herself in her university studies and actually works in a pub. And that was kind of how she kind of got through. She didn't really, I think she, probably prefers animals to humans. I don't know, there's probably a word for that. And she was sort of, we were keeping a close eye on her, let's put it that way. And I rang her one morning to see how she was, and she said, "Oh, no, I'm feeling pretty good today, Dad." And I said, "Oh, that's good. So, how are you managing that, and what are you doing? What's your day like?" And she said, "Well, actually, I got up really early this morning, went to a Pilates class because if I knew if I did Pilates, I'd feel better." And I think that's just such a great example of that first use of the physical domain of exercise. We know that if we go for a walk or just do some form of exercise, we always feel better, whether that's green bathing and getting out into natural light, whether it's just literally doing something high cardio, like a high intensity training workout or something gets the heart rate really pumping for a little while. we just feel better. We do. It sort of pumps the system with cortisol, which is not great. I mean, it has its benefits, but it also pumps the system with dopamine, and that's just such a powerful, natural body sort of the way our body naturally responds to exercise and builds in a natural sort of barrier and capacity for greater resilience. Second one is food. I don't want to talk too much about that. A, don't know much about it. B, just, eating everything in moderation. So I don't really want to focus too much on that. I really want to get onto sleep though, because I think sleep is crucial. So psychologists will refer to sleep as the brain's battery. You'll die of a lack of sleep before you'll die of a lack of water, and before you'll die from a lack of food. So sleep's essential, and what wasn't mentioned in the bios, I spent some time in the military, and I understand some of the techniques they use, for example, for training for interrogation. And one of the things they do is they keep you awake for as long as they possibly can. Now, most interrogation training phases are 72 hours, so 3 days. And the idea of that is to, over the course of 3 days, is to deprive you as much sleep as they possibly can, because it weakens you. It weakens the mind, and it breaks you down far more than starving you of food or water, way more. And so sleep's really, really important. You use it in a negative sense like that to interrogation technique, but in terms of the positive effects of sleep, it's fantastic to get plenty of it. Now, not everyone's lucky enough to do that. So I've just put some bits and pieces down there. This is the work of Dr. Linda King, who is an Olympian competitor sleep coach. That's what she does. She's got a PhD in sleep, and she coaches Olympians. So on how to sleep better for obvious reasons. So her view is, and so I'm quoting her now. So her view is 7 to 8 hours sleep is the sort of optimal amount. Now, there are plenty of people who sustain themselves on much less than that, but I think if they do that, there's an element of biphasic sleeping. Now, so monophasic sleeping is what most of us do, which is where most of you do maybe, where you sleep at night and you're awake all day, right? That's just what we naturally do. But biphasic sleeping is something that used to take place in the military, and I didn't have a name for it when I was younger, but that's what we were doing. And that is where you have less sleep during the night, but you cat nap during the day. Sometimes it's referred to as the NASA nap. So when NASA introduced an afternoon nap, their productivity rates of their teams went up by up to 56%, which I thought, first time I heard that, was staggering. Like, A, it's NASA, right? So these are pretty smart people. And B, they've actually implemented it. Drop in the chat if you do this, right? I know there's one veterinary practice in Adelaide that I've met with, and I've sat in their pod. They have a pod where you can go and cat nap. And the idea is you want to keep that cat nap below 25 minutes. So if I'm doing it, I haven't had a great night's sleep, and often I'm traveling in hotels, not sleeping that well. I'll get to the reason why in a second. But it's because I will actually set my alarm for 24 minutes, go and lay down in the bed, and I'm out like a light, maybe in 5 minutes, maybe in 1 minute, maybe it takes me 20 minutes. And then I just get 4 minutes of power napping, and that sustains me for the rest of the afternoon. So there's me thinking that there's something wrong with me. And in actual fact, I was just tired. So that lack of focus was a result of being tired. So if you can, now in the military we used to do it because you do night operations and you're awake all night. So what we used to do is we would literally just lean against our pack and catnap for 30 seconds, and that would get us through. And we would do half a dozen of those a day. That's enough to keep you going. And you've experienced this when you're out driving a long distance or something. You pull over the side of the road, have a little bit of a power nap, and you come back and you're fine again for another couple of hours. So biphasic sleeping. The ultradian rhythm, I think, is a really important one. This is this 90 to 110 minute rhythmical cycle that our body goes throughout the day and the night. Now, apparently it doesn't change, but it just stays pretty consistent. And your body readjusts back to a normal cycle if you do happen to, international travel or something upsets that rhythm. The key is that if you go from a high to a low, and I might let me just um, I know I don't need to draw this, but you go from a high to a low. You can just imagine going up and down, up and down. And the peak to peak or the trough to trough is between 90 and 110 minutes. So keep it simple, just make it 90 minutes. So if you're at a peak at, say, 8:30 at night, that's when you're on a high, you've maybe just had dinner, you'll sit down and watch a bit of TV. Then by 10 o'clock, you'll be back on another high again. 45 minutes later, you'll be in the dip ready to go to bed. Now, the trick is, to know what that cycle is, because if you go past the cycle, and again, I'm quoting Dr. King, if you go past that sort of dip, you come out the other side, you're heading back to a high again. Now, the body's actually releasing cortisol as you're doing that, which is taking you up into this high zone again. Cortisol makes you hungry. And so you've got this stimulus that's taking place where your hunger hormones are kicking in. The hormones that say you're full are depleting, and the differential can be up to 50%, 20% reduction in hunger hormone, 30% increase in hunger hormones, 20% reduction in those hormones that say that you're full and you don't need food. So you've got this competing thing, and then you've got this cortisol that's hitting your system that says, I need sugar. So that's why there's a direct correlation between obesity and a lack of sleep. Now, the thing about cortisol is it's addictive. So what happens is you go through the high, you get to the low again, you go, I want more of that, right? So you go through the dip and you're in a high again. And this then leads to a whole stack of like disastrous sleep cycles, so sleep patterns people get in. So Linda King's hack, she says, you got to work out where the dip is, and you've got to go to bed within a 15-minute window of when that dip happens. Now, the dip, it's all day, right? This cycle doesn't sort of stop when you wake up in the morning. It goes all day. And so you might find at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're kind of like, if you're sitting behind your desk, you're zoning out. And then all of a sudden at 3:45, you're fine again. Then at 5:15, you're starting to fall asleep again. I get my maths right then, 4:30, starting to fall asleep again. And so it's just a matter of just tracking what that looks like for you and working out in the evening what your kind of time is to go to bed. And then just make sure you stick to the 15-minute window. Sleeping in, I'm not saying this, Linda said this, sleeping in is a waste of time. It doesn't achieve, you might feel better, doesn't do you any harm, but it's not doing you any good. It's better to get into a rhythmical cycle where you know your 15-minute go to bed window. That's the most important. And then when you wake up in the morning, just let yourself naturally wake up in the morning. If that happens to be 8 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. It's not going to do you any harm, but you don't need it. What you actually need is you need the 7 to 8 hours. So if that's, if you're going to bed at 10 o'clock, you've had plenty of sleep by 6 a.m. You don't need to sleep until 8 a.m. And thinking that I'll sleep until midday on a Sunday. Now, kids need a lot more sleep than adults do, but if you are, teenagers, they definitely need that 12 hours sleep, way more than we adults do. But it's not what you should be aiming for. I'll do my big recovery sleep on the weekend and not get out of bed till 10 o'clock in the morning. According to Linda King, is doing you no good at all. It's not doing any harm, but it's not really the benefit that you get from going to bed within the 15-minute window. So that's all well and good, right? Go to bed in that 15-minute window. The challenge is that if the room temperature is too high, you're going to struggle to go to sleep. And that's because the body needs to lower its core temperature at night to recover. Now, if you set the temperature too high, like 21, 22 degrees in the room, which would be the normal room temperature for sitting in an office and working, then you're going to struggle to go to sleep. So insomniacs, according to Dr. King, should be reducing the room temperature down to 17, 18 degrees. For me personally, 19 degrees is fine. 18 degrees is fantastic. If I go to bed and it's 18 degrees, wrap myself up in a doona or a blanket in the hotel room, I am out like a light, wake up the next morning. If I don't, and I'll kick the doona off, your body will work that out. Don't worry about it, right? But, if you get too hot or whatever, but, or it'll pull it up if you get too cold, but you're better off going to bed in a cold room, not a hot room. And insomniacs need even colder. So anything coming through in the chat there, Claire? I can see there's one comment in there, but obviously not
just yet. I will.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Actually, why don't we let's see if we get a little bit of interaction. Has anyone else experienced that? I might just pause there for a second just to kind of think about that physical domain. Anyone experienced that? Anything like to add? Maybe another little hack?
I can absolutely attest to that. That's a cold room for me, gives me the best sleep. I do find, like you, Paul, that I'll fall asleep a lot quicker, but I actually have a bit of a contrast. I have my hot water bottle with me now and the fan pumping above me, and that is how I sleep in bed. So the hot water bottle's up here, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's cold everywhere else. So
Okay, interesting. Okay, so you're sort of compensating for that cold. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool.
sorry, Paul. Someone, Cassidy, sorry, has commented, I can use this as evidence to hubby as to why I like the AC on 18 degrees, or as he would call it, Arctic.
Yeah, so true. Go hardest, Cassidy. Just, I tell you, it works. Um, yeah, lighting is a classic, isn't it? There's blue light everywhere, but the blue light on your phone uh, triggers the fight or flight response in your brain. And what I found most interesting when researching this topic is that we don't have two systems for dealing with stress. We only have one. So that's a switch from a parasympathetic nervous state, which is where that rested state where everything's just working nicely and as it should, to a sympathetic nervous state, which is elevated heart rate, increased blood flow, and a release of cortisol, release of other hormones as well, which I'm going to talk about, oxytocin, for example. But you get that sort of go into that stressed state. Heart rate variability might drop. All sorts of things can take place, and we don't have two responses. And the triggering one, that is the fight or flight one. We don't have the opposite. I won't go there, but we don't. But that fight or flight response happens whether you're looking at a blue light or you're being chased by something. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same physiological response. Obviously, it varies by degree. So you don't notice the subtle impact of that blue light. So I think that's a really important one.
Sorry, Paul, just one more comment from Katie in the chat saying that sound helps her and rain noises on apps or brown noise to shut any overthinking to go off to sleep. And I can absolutely agree with that, Katie. Sometimes I put on thunderstorms or intense wind sounds.
Yeah, totally. Our thought speed, our thinking is really, really can cause us a lot of grief. I'm going to talk about that in a second, actually. Okay, cool. Are we okay with that? Physical domain. Thanks, Katie. Let's have a look at the practical domain now. And this is not particularly highbrow. If you've got yourself organized, you're going to feel more relaxed than you are if you are completely disorganized. That's the bottom line. Now, this particular table here, first it was introduced by Stephen Covey, talks about those tasks that are important and not important that you do them, right? That's the left-hand axis. And then across the top is urgent, has to happen right now, and not urgent, which is the blue, sort of the right-hand side at the top there. So if we look at box A, right, that is urgent and it's important you do it. There's only three things that should be impacted that fit into that category, into that box in a veterinary practice, in my view. The first one is a client emergency out in reception, and you're called on to deal with it. There's lots of things that the rest of the team can deal with, but there's some things maybe that you have to deal with as a manager or as a senior person in the practice, right? So you have to go and deal with it. That's the first one. Second one is a patient emergency. As a clinician, that's obvious, but there would be other instances where even non-clinical staff have to kind of drop what they're doing to kind of organise or sort out a particular situation. And the third one is a staff issue, a team issue, such as sexual harassment, bullying, something that needs to be resolved straight away. You can't sort of say, "Oh, can we meet about this on Thursday?" Right? They just can't do that. It has to happen now. Everything else should not be appearing in that box. Now, really, really highly organized people spend 85% of their lives in the blue box. So that's important that they're doing it, but it's not urgent. Now, if it's not urgent, it's planned. So B time is planned time. So this means on Sunday or whenever you sit down and you go, righto, what's the plan for this week? I've got a, for me this week, for example, I've got this webinar tonight. I had a group today that I was working with online. Tomorrow morning, I've got a board meeting all morning. In the afternoon, I've got 2 large groups that I'm running through a 90-minute workshop each. On Thursday, Friday, I am doing all-day training online for our master's program. So people have been through our program now for 3 years and they've gone on to do extra training. So what are the chances of me this week doing anything else other than just focusing on those things? Now, if I didn't look at my schedule on Sunday night and go, well, I've got a fair bit on Monday, can you imagine what would happen if I just sort of woke up in the morning and thought, what have I got? So it's exactly the same for all of us. You say, this week I've got to do X, Y, Z, or I've got to attend one of the kids' swimming carnivals, or I've got to go and, I'm writing up some policies and procedure documents, or I've got to do some development reviews for the team. But you haven't actually allocated the time for it. When are you going to do it? Because, if you look at that chart, you kind of go, well, God, I run a veterinary practice, right? My whole life is urgent and important. Well, no, it's not, right? If you go in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, open the practice at, I'll just make up some numbers. But open the practice at 8. You do rounds, overnight patients, admissions, discharges, 8:30, maybe a little bit of a huddle, 9 o'clock or 8:45, you've got your first consult. That takes you through until 10:30. Then you still do a bit more workup, phone some clients. Maybe on Thursdays you do a bit of surgery. Then you've got more workup. Then in the afternoon you've got consults again through until 5 o'clock. Finish consults. You hope you've got all your histories done. You're all organised. You're out the door by 5:30, 6 o'clock. You're in B time. That whole day is in B time. Now, what you do in that block consulting, who knows? Like, it depends, right? But your time in terms of blocking is done for you. Now, if you did that every day and then expected to get your development reviews done, how are you going to do that? And can you imagine how stressful that is when you get to the end of the week and you've yet again let the team down because you haven't done it all? You've let the family down because you haven't been home for dinner on time or whatever. So yes, there will be emergencies come in and you have to deal with them, and that's A time. Okay. But there will be a lot of things that you actually don't have to deal with. And particularly, we talk a lot about this from a leadership development perspective. You've got to get other people doing stuff. When you get other people, they're growing, getting better, stronger sense of autonomy. And I'm going to talk about autonomy, how that sort of falls into resilience a little bit later on too. Then, of course, the stuff that you delegate, so just get other people to do it, which I'm referring to. It's not important you do it. It's got to happen, but you don't have to do it. And then D time is just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. It's just stupid stuff. You just don't even need to do it. And yet it just can fill your day with wasted stuff. Can we just drop into the chat lines? Is anyone actually... does that resonate, firstly? And number two, is there any particular aspect of that you'd like to highlight for you personally? I used to open every email. I just stopped. So this is stupid. Like, by the time I opened every email and read it, I just wasn't getting to the really important stuff. Yeah. I'm sure that frustrates members of my team, but they know to put something in the subject line that actually will catch my attention.
Cassidy absolutely agrees with you, Paul, and said delegating is gold. It took a lot of practice to relinquish control, but always worth it.
Yeah, and the 2 reasons why I think delegation doesn't work. The 2 sort of things that are important for delegation to work is probably a better way to phrase it. The first one is you've got to tell people what they're responsible for, but the second one, you've got to give them the authority to do it. And I think often it's the second bit that's lacking for people. So they kind of go, oh, your job is this, this, and this. And then what they do is they spend their entire lives catching boomerangs while these people don't actually have the authority to act on those things, whether it be maintaining all the equipment in the practice. Well, what does that look like? On a day-to-day basis, can I spend money? Like you told me I'm responsible for maintaining it. If you set someone up with $1,000 limit that they could spend up to $1,000 a week on maintenance, you're not going to get too many weeks in before the alarm bells are going off. So you're not going to break the practice. But that person's going to spend a couple of $100 here and $300 there, and all the equipment's going to be maintained as long as they've kind of got some parameters. Then they can actually just go away and do it. And sometimes you can walk into practices where well, not just practices, but any workplace where that's just not happening. And you see it, don't you? People are too frightened to act. They can't do anything. Even if I'm going with my dog into a veterinary practice, and people don't have the authority to give me a coffee thing to go down the road to get a cup of coffee because the vet's running 20 minutes late. Well, it's $5. So they would encourage that, but they don't have the authority to spend the money or hand out the card. And it permeates through so many things, doesn't it? Mm. You just put a lot of recovery activities into what's a recovery activity? Is that a vet term? Into the D category, I think speaks to. Oh, self-care. Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 Yeah. Those sort of things.
Yeah, yeah. So ditch it. Just you wouldn't do it. Like it sort of becomes this, I don't have time to go to the gym today or do any exercise. Yeah. Exactly. It does speak to that point, doesn't it? That you teach your mind that your body matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that makes it less of a D category and more into the B, which just means that you just schedule it and plan it
Yeah.
so that you're getting that balance. So
Yeah.
it's a good point. Thank you for that.
And then if you are going to plan it, make sure you don't plan it to fail. But 5 o'clock, that's hopeless, right? Well, and maybe it's not from everyone, but 5 o'clock can be quite tricky because life takes over by 5 p.m. Whereas if you get up in the morning and do it in the morning, it's done. Yeah. Cool. Okay. A couple of other things on the practical domain, which I think are probably worth touching on. I don't know if any of you have seen that video. I was going to play it, but it probably takes up too much time. It's a bit self-indulgent, but it's that US Navy SEAL general or whatever he is, and he's talking about the power of making your bed. And if you haven't seen it, just go to YouTube and just type Navy SEAL make your bed. It's a pretty cool motivational thing. I don't think I ever really understood it. When I went through the officer training school, which is 4 years, it's pretty intense as a kid. Down in Canberra, Duntroon, I never really, they don't explain these things to you. You just go and do them because you're kind of told to do them. But they literally, the coin bouncing thing, it actually happens, And so the point of it is to be quite painful about, I found it a bit painful on the receiving end, but then, as you get more mature, it kind of makes sense. But that process of making your bed every morning, and what this general says is if you can't make your bed in the morning, the simple tasks, you're not going to achieve the big tasks throughout the day. And I thought to myself, yeah, I can totally relate to that because once you've made the bed, it kind of gets you going. Have you ever, with kids, have you ever sort of been in that situation where the room's messy and you walk into the room, there's Lego all over the floor, like it's just a rock show. If you walk in, even as an adult, it's overwhelming. Like, where do I even start? So a great way to get past that and to push through that is to recognize what that procrastination, the room would be better if it was tidy, right? Well, maybe, well, certainly the Lego off the floor because that bloody hurts. But if you are, this is the difference between indecision and procrastination. Indecision is I haven't quite worked out whether it's the right thing to do. Procrastination is I know it's the right thing to do, but I'm suffering from an amygdala hijack right now. I can't get started. And that is an emotional response. It's an amygdala response. It's a fight or flight response, and it's so tiny. So the best way as a hack for that is to breathe. Right? So if you breathe deeply, the fastest, or according to one psychologist, I'm not sure this is true or not. I'm happy for someone to jump in the chat and correct me, but one psychologist I was talking to, and she said, the only way to go from a sympathetic nervous state, that fight or flight that we were talking about earlier, into a parasympathetic state is through your breath, through deep breathing. Now, it kind of makes sense. I've been in certain very stressful situations where breathing has got me through it. But one of the states that I didn't realize was actually an emotional stress state was procrastination. And procrastination it requires breathing to push through it. So I tried it and it's unbelievable. Have a crack at it. It's so literally the first time it happened to me, I was procrastinating. I knew how to do it. I was thinking, oh, I don't want to do it. It's like 5-minute job or 10-minute job. Just put it off. I just started breathing really deeply and I just went straight through it, like literally just walked straight through the task and completed the task. But making your bed's a bit like that. You know, if it's kids, here's a cool way to do it. Make it a game. Say, we've got 1 minute. See what you can do in 1 minute. Ready, set, go. See, what that does is it moves through that procrastination, which is the fear response of, oh my God, I've got to clean my room, to one of gamifying it, which helps get through that sort of amygdala response. So make your bed. Polish your boots was an interesting one. When we're in the field, on operations, you have to clean your boots every morning. And I just thought, what a waste of time. Now, I'm not sure everyone does it. You know, maybe special forces guys don't because the polish smells too much. But if you're in the jungle, it's not great because it really stinks. But if you just get up in the morning and you wipe the mud off your boots and you give them a bit of a polish and you put them on, the first step you take is straight into the mud again, right? So it's kind of like, well, what was the point of that? But actually is a huge point because it sort of sets you up from a practical point of view. You're kind of starting your day in a systematic way that's the same every time. Feel free to drop in the chat if you've got something cool that you do that just is that kind of thing that gets you going each day. Maybe it's going and making a cup of coffee in the morning. It's that sort of ritual that is just at a practical level, just enables you to get started. And then from there, you can build on that or gain some momentum. I'll put a couple of other examples in there. The drug orders are in place for the week. So that's sorted. The rosters are in control. These things matter. They really do. So people who say you can't teach resilience, you can. If you start to implement some of these things and get sort of organized in your life, you will feel better and you'll be able to handle stuff. And the test will be that if you don't, and see how good you are, just see how well you can handle the little things that just tip you over the edge, that shouldn't tip you over the edge. Psychological domain. I love this John Milton expression. We can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. And I think what that's really speaking to is the fact that our mind or our perception shapes our reality. Now, there's some work by, what's his name? Sean Acker. He wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage. It's part of our reading list on our courses at Lincoln. And the happiness advantage is if you can turn up to work happy, you'll do a better job than you will if you turn up to work stressed or under the weather. Now, intuitively, that makes complete sense to me. But the problem is that we don't live our lives like that. We go to work hoping work will make us happy. And when it does, we raise the bar. So we never really get there. Sean Acker has this cool expression, we move happiness over the cognitive horizon. We never actually get there. So his thing is, what we've got to do is got to reverse the formula. If we can get happy in ourselves, then go to work, then we get this compounding effect and everything's better. Right? So how do you get happy in yourself? He has this expression that he uses as well, and that is that if I know 100% of your external world, I can only predict 10% of your happiness levels. That's because 90% of your happiness is not predicted by your external world, what happens to you, it's how you process it. It's your perception of that. You know that the classic 3 Ps. When something goes wrong, they teach this to kids. When something goes wrong, is it permanent? No. Like it's not permanent. It'll be gone tomorrow. Next week, I won't even remember what happened today. So it's not permanent. Is it pervasive? Does every client hate me? Or was it just that one client that was probably having a bad day, just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? So it's not pervasive. And is it personal? No, I just happen to be the one standing in front of this person. It's not personal to me. So they're the 3 Ps. And I feel like, if you're looking for a way to think about how do I perceive the world, that's not a bad, that's not a bad place to start, is to think about that. And we have this freedom of thought. Well, allegedly. There's a lot of thoughts that come and go, aren't there? Some pretty horrific ones. If you're struggling in this area, I'd really, really recommend this guy called Dr. Russ Harris. Russ Harris? Maybe. If anyone's heard of the happiness trap, feel free to drop it in the chat line. I think it's Dr. Russ Harris, happiness trap. He's a drug rehab guy from Perth, a very, very cool psychologist. He's just got some really, really great practical tools. And he talks about how thought is quite problematic for us in terms of, wanting the next drug, right? So he's teaching people to get off drugs. And he's got some really inspiring things in there. His view is we've got to stop trying to have happy thoughts all the time, and we've got to have helpful thoughts. And I can really relate to that. If you're worrying about something and the thoughts you're having are, woe is me, and I'm never going to get through this, it's going to be terrible. Then particularly if you're in a leadership role, there's something going wrong in the clinic and your cash flow or whatever you're really worried about and how are you going to get through this. Then the happy thought is, I don't worry about it, it'll be right. We've survived every other time. Or I'll go on a holiday soon, or whatever, right? So they're sort of trying to replace the thought with a happy thought, sort of controlling measures that never really work. It's like holding a soccer ball underwater, eventually just pops to the surface. You can only hold it for so long. The helpful thought would be, thank goodness someone's thinking about the money, because no one else is. And if I wasn't thinking about it, I wouldn't know tomorrow morning to ring the bank manager or the accountant to really try and dial in and understand my numbers. Or, as we often find, ring Lincoln. And, you need to speak to one of our senior people and they'll find the money that you need to find in practice to sort out any cash flow issues, for example. So a phone call to your Lincoln coach, it's not selling you into Lincoln coaching, but a phone call can be so incredibly helpful. I was on the phone today to a client who's having some really big challenges, and within 30 minutes, she'd worked out her own problem. She just didn't know what questions to ask herself. So through asking her a series of questions, she resolved it. She was so happy this afternoon when I spoke to her on the phone with a plan. So that's way more helpful, is to go, I'm going to pick up the phone to somebody and see if I can get some help on this, rather than me try and do it myself. Moving on to the psychological domain. Social domain. So eustress versus distress. Just an acknowledgement of the fact that actually stress is good for us. There's a certain element of stress. The eustress versus distress curve. So up the side you've got performance, and down the bottom you've got stress. So as the stress goes up, your performance goes up. We know that. If you want to get a job done and you've got all weekend to do it, it's going to be a pretty crappy job by the end of the week. But if you say, look, I only need 3 hours to do this, just give yourself 3 hours, set some time parameters around that, and maybe don't start it till Sunday lunchtime. And that extra stress will drive up your performance and you'll do better. But then it reaches distress and it goes down the other side. There's too much stress and our performance then tends to drop. And then eventually we get to burnout. So if you look at the curve, it starts off down the bottom here as apathy, like there's no pressure at all to get it done, so therefore you don't do it at all, right? So that's apathy, and then performance goes up, and that's eustress, which is good stress, then distress, and then burnout. It's better knowing where you are on the curve. That's really important in terms of your own performance. But not all stress is bad for you. Some stress is good. When people say to me, oh, I'm so stressed, I go, great, right? You need to be a bit stressed, because right now you're underperforming. You need a bit of stress to raise your performance level. Mindfulness is a really important aspect of the psychological domain. There's this concept of the thinking self versus the observing self. The thinking self is the one that's going crazy, ruminating, while world's coming to an end, right? That's the thinking self. And our thinking self is pretty powerful. And then there's the observing self. And the observing self sort of turns the volume knob down on thinking, and you just observe something. And what that does is that helps to get rid of the thoughts. I'll give you an example, right? I can't see whether you're playing, but you got to play. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is, in front of you, I'd like you to find an inanimate object, anything. I've got a pair of secateurs. Don't ask me why, right? But I have a pair of secateurs. Just something that's not going to give you any feedback. Don't pick up a phone or a watch. Like something that's going to give you no feedback. And what I want you to do is, a pen's perfect. I want you to just observe it. I bet you've never observed this pen or whatever you've picked up in as much detail as you're about to observe it. I'd like you to look at its color, its shape. I'd like you to don't think about it. Just observe it. Just look at it, right? Its shininess. Maybe it's got a clip on the end. Just observe the clip. Maybe it's got some divots in it, or some, some patterns in it. Maybe it's got a little logo on it. Still observing it? So we've been observing now for 30 seconds. 100% I can guarantee the thought that was in your head when you picked up that pen is no longer in your head. That's the power of the observing self. So if you can get into a state where you have built the muscle to be able to do that relatively quickly and easily, whether that's through focusing on your breathing or a body scan or whatever, right? If you can develop a technique, listening to an app, if you can develop a technique for that, then you shut down the thinking self and you become calmer and much more clarity. We do an exercise in our senior leaders and our junior leaders program on this. And it's really powerful. I've been doing it for 15 years. I have never, ever, well, occasionally met people who has no effect, but you can see while they're doing a 10-minute mindfulness exercise, they're all over the place. They're not really being mindful. They're still thinking about everything they were thinking about before they closed their eyes and sort of tried to get into this mindful state. But those people who do follow the guided meditation, just for like a minute out of 10, so much greater clarity. That is unbelievable. Like that is a superpower. If you can tap that and get beyond that sort of stuff, and mindfulness is a fabulous way to do it. And reframing stress, right? So stress actually releases oxytocin, which is a cuddle hormone that promotes feelings of safety, calmness, and trust. When you get stressed, you release that oxytocin. It's not called the cuddle hormone for nothing. That encourages you to reach out and connect with somebody else. So go with it, and it works. Resilience, I've always thought this, resilience is a team sport. It doesn't happen on your own. I've never met soldiers, officers in combat. I've never met anyone that just in complete isolation. I mean, I'm sure they exist, but most people need to reach out, touch, feel connected. I was reflecting, Claire, on your acknowledgement of country this morning. And, when you said that the First Nations people have been here for 60,000 years, like to put that into context, as a species, as a human species, we didn't stop hunter-gathering berries until 10,000 years ago. That's when the agricultural revolution took place. I mean, it was probably the start of a lot of our downfall, to be honest. But that's when we started living in a village. That was when a lot of the fight or flight mechanism kicked in for us. Psychologically, get booted out of the village and you're going to die. We need each other. And when you said that this morning, 60,000 years, I thought, my God, that's like 6 times the last ice age. Like, it's just phenomenal. Every time I hear those numbers around our First Nations people, it just really blows me away. We grow from adversity. We do. You put yourself out there and do hard stuff, you don't spring back. You don't. So we've got to encourage our teams to have a crack at things and not be frightened and not be wrapping them in cotton wool. Because when they actually have a go at something and they succeed at that, they come back stronger. So that natural inclination we have to wrap our kids in cotton wool, all that sort of stuff, don't do it. Just don't. Let them have a crack at things and let them fall over. Let them scratch themselves. They'll get back. If they fall off the bike, it's not going to kill them. They get back up on the bike and they've got lost a bit of bark. It doesn't matter. They will grow from that. Professor McGonigal, Kelly McGonigal from Stanford University, talks a lot about the link that it has to meaning. And she's got this quote: "A life without stress often means a life without meaning, purpose, or ambition." I think that's quite cool. Can relate to that. Okay, social domains. We're up to the third domain now. Third? No, fourth. This is the fourth domain. Final one. Which is good, given I've only got 10 minutes left, is this concept of pro-sociality, right? Which is the fact that we're hardwired for connection. I just spoke about the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago. That was when we really came together, started living together in a village and sort of having to get along with each other. But we are hardwired for connection. The interrogation I was referring to, you know what they do? They isolate you. It's exactly what they do. They pull you out. You're not going to get your mates around you. Whole point of it is to get you alone. What's really interesting from pro-sociality point of view is we always used to think that if someone did something nice for me, then, or let's say, for example, one of your team members in your practice did something nice for a client and the client brought in some flowers or a bottle of wine or something to say thank you, or some chocolates, right? The recipient of those things is feels good, right? So they get the flowers and it's a lovely feeling. So there's the gratitude that they feel for having received it is fabulous. But can I tell you, the person who gave the flowers or gave the chocolates feels just as good. So it's a lift. So you can manufacture that. I remember coming out of a hotel in the Gold Coast, and there's a homeless guy sitting there right outside the hotel, literally looked like he was, in a very, very hard night. And I said to him, I leant down to him and I said, "Mate, are you hungry?" And he just looked at me with this completely vacant stare. And so I said, "Let's go to the shop, we'll grab some food." So he got up, followed me into the shop. The 7-Eleven guy thought I was a weirdo. And I said, "Just grab something to drink, grab some food." So he grabbed some Doritos. I mean, it wasn't exactly a healthy meal, but it didn't matter. He wanted cigarettes. I said, no, we're not getting cigarettes, right? But you get food and a drink. And I felt great. Like I was walking on air after that. Now, I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because this kid looked like my eldest son. That's the reason why I did it, because he looked like he was in his early 20s. And I think, how do you get to that stage at your age? So I just felt terribly sorry for him. But that's the reason I did it. But I did feel good afterwards. So I think if you manufacture it, probably doesn't have the same effect. It's got to be spontaneous. Pseudo, real, and self-esteem. This is a really, really important one, I think. I think we're going to get this straight away. Pseudo-esteem, easy come, easy go. That's Facebook. You get 500 likes, happy days. Everyone, you're on a high. I don't know, maybe 500 is excessive, but you get whatever you get in terms of likes. Well, the reason why it doesn't really sustain you is because the next day you don't get any likes and you're a loser. Right. So it's kind of like you're bouncing around like a yo-yo, not really getting anywhere in life. Then there's real esteem, and that's where your mates tell you you're amazing. Well, they would say that, right? So that doesn't really help. It's better than pseudo-esteem, but it's not as good as self-esteem, and self-esteem is experiential. That's where you actually experience it yourself. This is why when we're talking to people about leadership, it's really important you flick that switch and say, you know what, it's not about you as the leader anymore, it's about them. They need to get better at what they're doing. The only way they're going to get better is if you help them by having a crack at stuff and, learning some new things. And you watch their self-esteem rise. And with that, their resilience and their capacity to do things. Cool. I want to talk about this, right? So I've got 2 more slides. This slide here, I don't think you could have a conversation around resilience, a complete conversation around resilience, without looking at some self-determination theory. So this is the stuff by Dici and Rich and Ryan. And they talk about 3 lenses, and you'll be able to see a really nice crossover here, I think. First one is autonomy, and that sense of being in control of one's own actions. Well, that speaks a lot, I think, to practical resilience. Like I'm organized. When individuals feel they have a choice and can act in alignment with their values, they're more motivated and better able to persist through challenges. So what do you do for yourself and for your team members to enhance their sense of autonomy? How clear are you in the direction you give them? So they know exactly what's expected of them. And then you give them the tools to do it. And then you get out of their way and you let them do it, whether they're kids or whether they're employees or team members or even clients. Give them the autonomy. Tell them what needs to be done and let them do it. Don't give them 3 choices or abdicate your responsibility as a clinician by telling them what they, you don't know, they need to make the decision. Help them make the decision by giving them all of the facts. This is why I've never understood veterinarians who don't recommend, for example, workup and cytology. I've never understood that. As a client, that makes no sense to me. I'm sure there are circumstances where it can. I don't want to get into that conversation, but for me, it's kind of like, give me all the information and then let me make a decision based on all the information, not half the information or maybe or whatever. So that's autonomy. Second one is competence. This is about getting better at stuff. The sense of effectiveness and mastery, feeling capable and equipped to meet challenges, boosts your confidence, helps people adapt. This is what I was talking about with self-esteem. You give people the skills, train them up, give them the scaffolding to help them get better. Then you can take the scaffolding away later. You put the scaffolding in place. They know exactly what they're meant to be doing, and you support them through that process. People that come on our leadership programs, they don't learn it in 4 days. They don't learn it in a weekend. It's a waste of time. They actually have to have the scaffold over a sustained period to go out, practice it, fail, get up again, have another crack, fail, have another go, get a bit better at it. And all of a sudden, they can have a confident conversation. Well, confident conversations don't happen from learning the skill. That's not how you learn how to have a confident conversation. That gives you the framework for how to structure it. But until you go out and do it 10 times and fall over 9 times, you won't get good at it. So it's actually just a waste of time, I think, unless you actually go out and practice it. So that's that. Developing that competence, I think really does involve getting this strong sense of it's okay to let go. It's okay to have a crack. It's okay not to do so well. Set your own expectations clearly, and then that will go. And the last one's relatedness. So this sense of connection and belonging, supportive relationships provide emotional resources and buffer stress, making people more resilient in the face of hardship. That's that connection that we're talking about. That social domain of resilience, where if I feel connected with people around me, I don't feel judged all the time. I feel like people are curious about what's going on. That's going to really, really drive up my relatedness. But also that sort of, the 3 Ps around perspective, pervasiveness, and permanence. Just understanding how do I fit into the big picture. Astronauts, when they take off and they get to the point where they can stick their thumb over the Earth for the first time, which we can do over the moon, right? From here, they can do it over the Earth from up in space. That's called the overview effect. That has a really cathartic influence on astronauts. That just profoundly changes the way they view the world after that perspective. Like, it's just, yeah, like a little bit like what you were saying, Claire, at the beginning with 60,000 years. Like, that doesn't affect. If that doesn't impact your perspective, I don't know what would. When you put it into context. Okay, let's draw some links now in the last few minutes. I found this quite helpful. If we're going to build resilience in the context of the veterinary profession and the environment, it's about strengthening the ability of veterinary teams and systems to adapt to and recover from environmental, operational, and psychosocial stressors. I think that's a really powerful statement. So everything we've learned tonight, all these skills, and I'm sure the deck's going to go out, or the recording's going out, isn't it? Then I feel like if we can do those things, can we narrow it down and get some real focus now to how we're going to support both our team, our clients, and our industry more broadly in the face of the adversity that climate change is bringing. So from an operational resilience, it's about ensuring continuity of care during climate events. And there's just a couple of examples there. I was thinking about telemedicine, mobile clinics, emergency stockpiles of equipment, flying doctor service up in the north. One of our clients was the flying doctor up there, veterinary. Clinical resilience. So having a look at your diagnostic, treatment, disease surveillance practices. What are you doing? You've got all of these techniques in place for when particular diseases, when there's a particular outbreak. I think that's an element of resilience that you're building into the practice. And the last one is mental resilience, which, I mean, I've put as third there. It's got to be the top of the pile, hasn't it? That capacity for veterinary professionals maintaining a sense of psychological health, because I think climate change effects are really horrific. I'm going to finish with a cool story. Well, cool story. I think it's quite a profound story, and it's one of the Lincoln team. Veterinarian, South Australia, is one of our coaches and one of our professional facilitators now. I've known him for, gosh, I think probably 12, 13 years. And he was describing to me when the bushfires went through South Australia, and he got the call out to, along with all the vets, to head down the local gymnasium, all these bunning tables laid out with burnt koalas, right? Due to a climate event. And he walked into the room, and he could see what was happening. A veterinary practice, a couple of vets, a couple of nurses headed down there, and they're sort of walking around a pack. And so there's koalas at one end of the gym. They're going to not make it because they need to be put to sleep. And then the koalas at the other side of the gym, probably with the right focus, are going to get a result. And he could see what was going to happen without that triaging taking place. It was pretty problematic. So he used his leadership skills that he developed over the years, not just with Lincoln, but he's to say an older guy. He's not that old. But he said he used his skills as a mature veterinarian and some of the stuff he learned on Lincoln to say, look, guys, we just saw what we're doing. This isn't going to work. We need to triage. And he said for him, it was this sort of moment in time where he kind of was able to bring to bear some of that sort of resilience in the face of adversity and understanding. I think it largely came from competence. Bring his competence to bear to support an activity that was fundamentally important and save lives. And I thought it was a really nice example to round out how, as veterinarians working in really difficult circumstances anyway, let alone when there's some sort of crazy climate event happens, how we deal with that and use these skills, use them. But if you don't use them, you won't get any better at them. So if you don't start trying to sleep more effectively and actually put these things into practice and work out what that temperature is, it won't happen. If you're stuffing around at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night, you should be going to bed, you should, and you don't, then it's going to happen. Just practice it. Just give it a go. See what happens. Put your phone in another room. Don't have it by your bedside if you can't help yourself. Those sorts of things, I think, are really important things to start to put into place and practice. I'm bang on time, Claire.
Well done. Thank you so much, Paul. I'll quickly open it up just for a minute if there's any questions. Otherwise, I did pop in the email that you are more than welcome and encouraged to send questions to, and I will pass them on to Paul if you had any. Helen, you've just popped off camera. Did you have a question, or you're on mute?
Oh, Helen, you're on mute. Yeah. That's my trick.
Just a comment to say what a terrific summary and so wide-ranging. I think it's terrific. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Helen. Thank you. That's lovely.
Right.
Thank you, Helen. That's great feedback. All right, everyone. I will wrap up. Paul, perfectly timed. And as Helen just said, a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to go and prepare myself for bed shortly. Now, I can feel that cycle approaching. Thank you to everyone for attending. I really appreciate it. We know how valuable time is, especially as the year starts to ramp up. As we mentioned, this will be uploaded to our website and YouTube channel. And we will be at the AVA in May. So please pop by and see us. We will have our brand new membership up and running then. So come and hear all about it. Once again, Paul, just thank you so much for your time tonight. And again, an amazing presentation.
No problem.
For
See you next
everyone.
time.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.